Let's read this through together then. Since Yuumi's release in 2019, she's simultaneously become one of the most popular champions and the most contentious. Yuumi is a special champion that allows new players not only experience League of Legends quickly, but also to learn the game side by side with their friends. While Yuumi succeeded those initial goals, she's also been a tough balance problem at all levels of play despite numerous changes and updates. We're here today to shed some light on the design team's thoughts of our magical cat friend, as well as provide some insight on the Yuumi rework. So, immediately there's a problem here. Because you see, learn the game side by side with friends and experience League of Legends quickly. Why is she not released as a starter champion then? Why is she not 450 RP, 900 RP? Something like that, like an Ashe or a Misfortune or whatever, that kind of price range. Because that's actively working against the entire identity as champion then, right? That's one of your core goals. Why is that not the case? So, that's a big thing. Norking, thanks for the follow, appreciate it. They can't attach the elephant in the room. Unlike every other champion in League of Legends, Yuumi has a unique mechanic that allows her to attach to her allies and remain untargetable for an indefinite duration. While this unique mechanic has made her more approachable for a large number of players, which it has in fairness, that's not something to argue with, and helped them fall in love with Yuumi, it also created some obstacles. It has created a freaking great wall of riot. This is the wall keeping the wildlings and the White Walkers out from Westeros. This is not a small problem. This is not an obstacle. This shit is so hard to deal with. It's... God damn. Okay, we'll continue. We'll get to that later. The combination of Yuumi's enchanted level defenses, hyperscaling identity, access to powerful engage tools, and untargetability create the perfect storm for frustrating gameplay with little to no means of counterplay. Yes. Enchanters are a class often kept in check by their spell ranges and low durability. They're normally fairly okay range. It's more about... Yeah, the durability thing I agree with. The spell ranges, I think that applies to Lulu. I don't think that applies to every enchanter. Maybe someone like Tarek if you're counting him. Which limit how effectively they can protect and support melee champions. For example, a fighter assassin diving a backline needs to do so without the help of a Lulu shield or a Soraka heal, and are often equipped with abilities and items to help them out. Yuumi circumvents a lot of this as she's free to jump to whichever champion is strongest, regardless of what happened in the early game. That's very true. Yep, I agree with that. I agree with that in that sense. Since her release, we've made numerous small changes to maintain Yuumi's core fantasy while limiting her presence in pro play. Why didn't you do that before Worlds then, if that's something that you've been keeping on the radar? A few more balance changes and durability update later. Yuumi still hasn't found a stable place in solo queue and has remained one of the premier champions in the last 2 world champions. It's been ridiculous. Again, that's underselling that, Jesus. As a result, we think... Wait, what were the stats? Was it literally 100% presence for Yuumi? Crazy. Or like 100% win rate in like the 6 games that they were picked or something. It's got some huge stats like that. As a result, we think it's time to take a larger swing at changes to hopefully land Yuumi in a better long-term spot, where she's better for her players, less prevalent in organized play, and easier to balance. All right, let's see what they got. In short, we're not satisfied with Yuumi's current state and are making progress for a rework for her, aimed at reducing some of the things that make her frustrating to play against, while retaining the core gameplay pattern of her players have come to love. Oh yeah, no, they hotfix buffed her. Yeah, they nerfed her and then they hotfix buffed her into an artillery bot around Worlds. That was a decision. Staying true to Yuumi. Okay, I'm not going to read through all of this because it looks like a lot of stuff. Because this will be the important paragraph, but I'm not going to read through all this. Key spot in the League of Legends roster. She's positioned as a champion like Garen, Annie, and Sona, who are designed to help players to help introduce players to Summoner's Rift. Why is she not priced like them then? What? Why is that not the case? And why is she not in the tutorial? Why isn't there a tutorial for someone like for Yuumi? I don't think many people know how to play support as a role because actually the tutorial is just farm these things, damage these things. That's not what enchanters and supports do. You're not making her identity as someone, the identity which you've stuck to, you're not making it easily achievable because you're making it harder to get into that sort of, to actually learn about that champion. These champions play a vital role, blah, blah, blah. Low barrier to entry. On the other hand, these champions lower skill ceilings and get weaker in optimized pro play. I think that's actually arguable. I think all of these have been pro viable at points. I mean, I guess in terms of mechanical skills, I think you mainly mean at like top end of solo queue most of the time. In terms of pro play, I don't think that if a champion is easy or hard, often plays into like pro balancing. Not in my eyes. Do you think a sizable player base? Love an intense champion focused on weaving, blah blah blah. Complex playstyle combined with Yuumi's frequent untargetability. Source of maneuvers. Unattaching gives enemies opportunities to interact with Yuumi, but using it as a core counterplay mechanic skewed towards high MMR players. But this is what you have chosen by making her untargetable. You can take these mechanics and maximize Yuumi's potential. High skill play. Trade their own health. Yep, that makes sense. That's what you do. You hop off level 1, get an auto attack, and you don't care if you take half your health bar. Just doesn't matter. Frequently unattaching to trigger their shield off cooldown. Had more health to trade versus enemies that even hyper-aggressive opponents like Draven and Lucian struggle against the cat. Yeah. Because you don't need to take flash as well. Similarly, when paired with a highly mobile partner, yeah, Q and I just get becoming ridiculous. We want to rework Yuumi to be an easy-to-learn enchanter that's all about protecting and enhancing her allies. So that means you're not going to be an artillery bot. Please. Because that's the other side of it, right? She's like a very big damage source when she's untargetable as well. This means a greater emphasis on how Yuumi can aid her allies in the early game by trading her damage and crowd control for more early power and defense. Does that mean less power out of the ult? I mean, that helps. It does. Early power and defense, though, I mean... Okay, let's read through the rest of it and then we'll react to that. We think Yuumi staying attached for long periods of time is essential for her to serve her current players, as well as players learning the game. But you're not teaching them the game by allowing them to stay attached to someone for the entire game. You're not actually teaching them the game. It is fundamentally not an analog to a League of Legends experience. You don't have to position. You don't have to understand using your HP as a resource. You don't have to understand dodging skill shots. You don't have to understand so many things. You have a targeted fucking skill shot as like the one thing in your kit which does have that kind of mechanical emphasis. Like, I think that yes, you are getting people to play the game, but you're not actually teaching them. That's the difference I have in a lot of the philosophy of this. You're not actually teaching players to play the game. You're allowing them to experience the game, but a very shallow version of it. And I don't actually know how much of that knowledge has been taken in. You don't have to learn about warding. You don't have to learn about positioning, team fight, like all of these things that we were talking about before. So many core skills of the game Yuumi just doesn't have to interact with. And you can still have a good League of Legends despite not knowing those, and I understand that. But that's not learning. That is kids bop League of Legends. Like, that is the most simplified way I can think of it. This is the most sanitized version of League without actually ever getting you to interact with some of the most important parts of it. I don't think, I wholeheartedly disagree that you are learning League of Legends. Now, I think that there should be more avenues into learning League of Legends besides watching pro players and learning from your friends, because that's the primary way that I learn League of Legends, that most people will learn League of Legends. They'll watch streams, they'll watch montages, they'll learn from their friends. For instance, I think that there's a lot of problems with how the jungle changes went through this year in terms of making it harder to counter jungle. And it felt like a real tacked-on method to try and make people enjoy jungle more. Teach people how to jungle. Give them a tutorial in-game. And I know that there is a problem. I think Smite had this problem. A guy called Sean in my community talks about this quite a lot in terms of Smite having to redo these guides over and over for how you should jungle because it changes so much. I don't care. You are a huge, huge company, one of the largest games in the world. You should have the resources to do this. And if you really want to enrich your game, you have to educate your player base if your game's balancing is based around knowing the game to an adequate to high level. If that's something that you need to know, you need to give them resources to do that. And I think that is vastly, vastly lacking in League. The tutorials don't teach you how to play the game. And champions like Yuumi don't actually help you either. They help you enjoy your first couple of games in League because you don't have to interact with it, but you're still not interacting with League. You're still not playing League of Legends.
All we are is...
Thanks for the follow, I appreciate it. Okay. These could be making Yuumi's success tied to winning lane, making her skills easier to dodge, and making her less powerful on highly mobile characters. Yeah, you need to reduce her base buffing ability of like the attack speed and AP on E and then W, at the AP AD on W. While we're still in the early stages of Yuumi's rework, you can expect to see a bit more from us next year, as we're making progress worth sharing. We want this rework to land our magical cat in a more stable place and maintain her core gameplay fantasy for our players. Thanks for playing us and see you on the Rift. I don't know. The core gameplay of Yuumi is to reduce your gameplay experience. If you have to have a champion that has to do that, you have fucked up your game. If you need to have a champion that reduces the gameplay experience this much, you need to educate and give resources to your player base to actually understand the game. And that's my problem with this. I feel like this is a problem we've had not just with Yuumi. I think this has started to like pervade so much of League in recent years. So it's a really good example. I'm going to go back to full camp for this actually, just because I've read what I needed to on this. So for instance, think about how in in 2021 we had Iron Spike Whip, we had Gore Drinker, and that kind of meta come through. Remember when we had like Viego mid in that season, Renekton mid, Lee Sin mid, particularly around summer, or like into spring and then in summer, I suppose. I kind of came around that point. Those champions didn't need to learn how to understand wave management because you just build an Iron Spike Whip, you would press E on Lee Sin and then press your Iron Spike Whip and you'd instantly clear the wave. Same with Renekton, Q and then to your whip. I remember watching back in season 4, 5, and 6, the best players, the best mid laners in the world, even, you know, like your Western representatives as well. And I really think that Bjergsen needs to be included in this list because he's core to this point. You have like Bjergsen, Faker, someone like Jensen, Frog, an awesome example of this too. The way that they would win lane is by incredibly intelligent about how you control your lane. In mid lane, you don't think about this because you don't have to freeze. The freezes and the pushes you do in mid are less obvious because it's a shorter lane. But if you're playing it against something like, say, Rookie, a really good example of this too, where you're playing an Akali or an Aurelia, you want the wave at a certain point. So when you hit your points of power, level 3, level 6, other points after that point, certain item break points, you want the wave in front of your turret so you can chase them down the entire wave. And also on the other side of that, you're playing something like Victor and wanting to do something more passive, you want to hold the wave outside your turret. This is still a thing called to Victor and other mages, where if you're not in a position to interact with the map and interact with your jungler, and you understand that the enemy jungler, the enemy support comes to your lane instead of you going to them, you want the wave in front of your tower so you can safely farm, unless you want to interact with the map. And understanding that is incredibly important. Giving people a way to just say, nope, wave is gone, is incredibly reductive to the higher level gameplay experience. And I also think that can add so much to players' enjoyment of the regular game as well, if they actually understand this stuff. It took pro players a while to understand this stuff. It takes a while for that to filter back down. The actual the player base we have right now is actually very intelligent compared to, and very knowledgeable compared to however many years ago. When I compare it back to Season 8, Season 4 is another great example, Season 5, people just know way more base information about the game. And if it has got to the point where that base information is too high, one frickin' champion ain't gonna fix your game like that. And if you think this is gonna be like your token effort to say, this makes it easier to enjoy our game, you need to seriously think about the resources you have to teach people about the game. And I don't mind, to a certain extent, stuff like jungle timers, respawn timers, stuff like that, objective timers. I think that is a level of convenience for me, which I just think is okay. I understand that, but in terms of like, again, stuff like macro, stuff like managing your waves, I think that should be something which should be really, really talked about more, and it should be given resources to do so, because that leads to this Yuumi problem, where you stick to your guns and you say, we need this champion because the game is too complex and we want a champion with a low skill floor so players can understand the game very early on. I understand some value in that, but that should not be your end goal. That should not be your end goal, to keep a champion like this in such a dangerous position. I've been ranting a little bit, but yeah, I think, and again, so Sam has a games design master's. I was on a course for games design as well. I did that for a couple of years down in London. Before I became a caster, I quit my uni degree there to become a caster. Games design, games development is something which is very, is something which I have a bit of an amount of grounding in. It's something which I'm very passionate about. And then learning League as well as a specialized interest really makes a lot of these topics very interesting for me to talk about, but also really frustrating on another level too. I think on the whole, League has made some very good decisions with the way that it's designed its game in terms of items and runes being a mechanism to balance an entire 160 odd highly in-depth champions. That is an incredibly hard thing to do. I think by them making the decision to say, actually, if we have a through line, a lever which affects entire classes of champions is able to like macro balance things, that has been an inspired motion through Riot and through League of Legends. I really like that as a game design change, but I hate the way that they are philosophically taking the game, because you are having key skills from League removed and sticking to their guns about this meant to be, you know, like making it. I'm not going to say making it too easy, because I don't think that should be the problem either. I don't think League has to be incredibly hard for all players and stuff like this. But at least give people the resources to learn about this stuff, man. At least fix your damn tutorial. Because, you know, we don't have particularly good events anymore. The tutorial's not fixed. The client's a buggy mess. We're having game-changing bugs in pro play, like Garm versus Top. For such a high-profile game, you need to find those resources somewhere, because this is going to massively impact the direction which your game is going, and I think that will be in a negative manner. I think that's all I want to say about Yuumi. A lot of that was a rant, I get that, and I understand there will be other takes on that. I'm very interested to see where it does go, but if you are really clinging on to Yuumi to be this intro champion, at least make it easier for people to actually have an intro to the game, like, oh god, outside of affecting all levels of play, you know. Oh god. Okay, right. That's that rant over.
A dubious little creature getting up to mischief. This is no good. Oh, the beast is demonic in nature. Very icky, no good.